Methamphetamine, or ICE, is Australia's illicit drug of choice.
Frontline health workers are being subjected to escalating violence, and the drug ICE is to blame.
I acknowledge today we've got a long way to go on this.
There are about 200,000 people in Australia every year who seek drug treatment and can't get it.
Now, I never thought I'd say this, but everything we've done to date is failed. It's worse now than it's ever been. So sensible people have to look at changing the system.
That Australia, and I quote, can't arrest its way, unquote, out of the ICE epidemic.
The impact of particularly ICE in our community is astronomical, and our approach is not actually providing any benefits. Treatment services at the moment are overwhelmed. Why? Because we don't have the right model.
What we've used for a long time in terms of a prohibitionist approach to illicit drug use and simply doesn't work.
I've spent years working in the prison system and I've seen how people end up there, not necessarily just for drug possession, but that's a cascading effect. You get caught with a small amount of drugs, they look for other things, you come into contact with the criminal justice system, it leads into more contact with the criminal justice system. Someone going to prison, you're not really going to deal with their drug and alcohol problem. You're going to criminalise that person further, you're going to brutalise that person. They're not going to address the underlying reasons why someone may have had problems with drugs or alcohol.
Everything we know about addiction tells us that punishing people for using drugs does not work. What we're doing by taking a criminal justice response is clogging up our courts, clogging up our justice system.
Now we've built 8,200 prison beds in Victoria. 60% of those people have drug and alcohol issues, 50% have mental health issues.
And it is rare you would find someone who has benefited from being in prison. For the majority of people, it's a cruel, inhumane system that actually makes the situation worse for them, not better. That's the reality for most people who end up in prison.
Crazy thing about this, it's the same message that I heard 23 years ago. It hasn't changed. We're still stuck there, fighting the war on drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
The war on drugs, it doesn't work. And it's not a war on drugs, it's actually a war on people.
I think it immediately creates an environment of mistrust and competitiveness, as if there are good guys and bad guys. The moment you use the word war, you invoke conflict.
So the police need to be allies in reducing drug use in the community, and those sorts of heavy-handed and often biased responses to particular groups in the community don't help the overall effort to reduce illicit drug use.
We're essentially treating addiction as though it's a matter of choice. Now, all the evidence tells us that is not the case. The medical evidence tells us that addiction is a matter of health.
Huge amounts of money have been invested in legal enforcement strategies and not enough in harm minimisation strategies.
Harm reduction is actually about treating people as humans. It's about sincerely caring for someone. It's about being compassionate. It's about looking past the drug and looking at the person.
We're realists. We say, yes, human beings do take drugs. We've seen it all through human history. The reasons they do it are many and varied. But let's make sure that when they do it, we reduce the harms that may come to them as individuals and may come to the broader society as a result of their habits.
I mean, everybody would like to see, a drug-free world, but that's not reality. There's been drugs in the world, ever since drugs were discovered.
People will do what people will do, and people need to cause the minimum amount of harm to themselves and have the maximum amount of opportunity to actually recover from whatever's occurring.
Now, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. This show is basically about obsession and about love, about romance, and about drugs.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's just humane. I think it's the right thing to do. But, as a way of selling this idea to people who aren't interested in being humane necessarily, it would save money.
We know that drug treatment pays for itself. So every $1 that is invested in drug treatment, the Australian community saves $7. So it's a massively positive investment.
The needle and syringe program in the first decade of this century in Australia cost taxpayers about $200 million, saved about 33,000 HIV infections, another 100,000 hepatitis C infections, and saved taxpayers somewhere between $2.4 and $7.7 billion. Second reason why harm reduction should be the core of what we do is that it's much more effective, much safer and much more cost effective than the other things we do for drugs, especially much more effective than law enforcement, than trying to reduce the supply of drugs, the availability of drugs.
We need to address the needs of the individual through programs that we already know are working, and we need to keep people away from the criminal justice system.
One of the comments that was most true during the report, but I think all committee members agreed with, that this is a problem that we cannot arrest ourselves out of.